there. Welcome to a new episode of My Body, My Jokes. And guess what? It's episode 30. Wow. 30 episodes. Feels like it's been 4 and somehow 400 at the same time. But I'm happy to be here. You know who I am. It's Morgan Gallo. I'm in Dude IDK Studios. I'm wearing my Dude IDK sweatshirt today. I'm happy to be here. Honestly, anyone listening to this podcast, you're an angel. I love you. Thank you so much. I've been getting a lot of feedback recently from just kind of like people at dance class or people I go to shows with, and they're, saying like, oh, I love your podcast. So thank you so much for even listening or paying attention whatsoever. It's been quite a project and I'm happy to be doing it. I'm happy to be like spreading the message I am. So with that being said, if you could support the pod by like reviewing it on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen, throw a like to my, Instagram when I post stuff about the pod. Anything you can do to help, because ultimately I just want to be able to spread the message about body positivity and anti-fat bias and anti-diet culture around the world. The other thing that I have going on is I started a Substack, and it's mostly just to have another place to compile my podcast episodes and my thoughts. But if you don't know what Substack is, it's kind of like it's like a blog platform, kind of, like similar to Tumblr, where you can kind of create your own page and have your own articles. And I've been writing some like rant pieces about the word healthy, and I wrote one where it's all the books I recommend in my recovery, just random stuff. So that like goes out every week. You get the podcast. It's like an email list. It'll also update people about my shows. So that's really exciting. It's just mybodymyjokes.substack.com. Everything is named the same because who am I if not self-involved? But today I thought that I would do another Q&A. We've had some questions come into the podcast that I love to answer, and I always love to kind of take a second every once in a while and connect back with the listeners and see what you guys have to say. You are always more than welcome to email the podcast at mybodymyjokespod@gmail.com. Actually, I think it's mybodymyjokespod@gmail.com. It's mybodymyjokespod@gmail.com. But I've gotten a few like very interesting questions, a few things that'll just randomly be DM'd to me, and I thought I'd read them aloud and kind of answer them for today's episode. So without further ado, here we go. First question. Does complimenting how good a person looks help their self-esteem when they're struggling with it? This is a kind of like two-layered question, right? Because I think a lot of us have been trained to see compliments about our looks as like a good thing. Anytime someone says like, oh, your hair looks nice, or your makeup looks good, or your outfit's cute, of course I'm going to think, oh, thank you. That makes me feel good. What I've learned though in my recovery is that sometimes complimenting people on their outwards appearance is more like harmful. And it's tricky, right? Like it's not like one of those things where you can never comment on the way someone looks, but it's like this kind of weird gray area, because are you further pushing unrealistic like standards by only complimenting people when they're all done up and they look good, and making them think that if they don't look that good, they're not going to get those compliments? Or are you just further proving the point that the only thing you pay attention to is the way they look? Like, obviously it's just so complicated and it's so nuanced. So I would say from like my, I guess, opinion, I don't think it's a bad thing to inherently look at someone, especially if they're your friend, and be like, oh, today they put a little extra effort into their outfit, their beard, their hair, their makeup, whatever it is, and like compliment that. I think it becomes a problem when it tends to be the only thing that you can find to compliment about a person, if that makes sense. So if you find yourself only giving people that positive feedback when they look a certain way, I think that's where it gets kind of tricky. I've also just learned, like, if you're commenting on something that someone can't change, like let's say you're commenting on like their eye color or like their, I don't know, body shape or something, sometimes that can be more difficult because if it's something they can't change, then they have to live with that. Whereas if you compliment them on like their outfit, that is something they can change. So it's not as big of a deal. So I guess overall, I would say you for sure, like compliments are not a bad thing. I would just try to aim for compliments that are maybe a little less related to someone's appearance and more related to like their energy. Like when I talk to young girls who are like, you know, in elementary school, if they're wearing something cute, instead of telling them, oh, you look pretty, I try to say, oh, you look really confident today, because it teaches them that when they're wearing something that makes them feel confident, they'll get complimented on their confidence rather than like looking pretty in a dress. So that's a toughie. That's a very tough question to answer. Second one, any coping tips for people who struggle with body dysmorphia? I don't know. I mean, yes, we've talked about this on this podcast before. Rosalie did an episode with me where she and I went through what body dysmorphic disorder is, which is actually like way more serious than just body dysmorphia. It's like, it's kind of hard to qualify to have it, but I do think a lot of us have, whether you call it body dysmorphia or something lesser than, it is very prevalent in our society. I think avoiding, or maybe not avoiding, but not relishing in the mirror as much. I notice that when I go through periods of really bad body dysmorphia, the easiest thing for me to do is to not look in the mirror, not stand in the bathroom looking at myself, not take a bunch of photos and stare at them forever. Like really just give myself a chance to get away from a reflective surface so that I'm not overthinking, because if I'm already in a bad mental state with body dysmorphia and then I'm kind of exacerbating it by just looking at myself over and over again, it's not going to get better. So I would say from top to bottom, recognizing that you have that body dysmorphic pattern of thought, and then kind of asking yourself these questions like, is this something that is affecting my daily life? Is this something that is affecting my job, my friendships, my family? Does this matter? Right? Like, is you constantly like insulting yourself and saying, oh, I'm too big, I'm too tall, I'm too skinny, I'm too whatever. Like, is that complimenting your life in any way? And then obviously if the answer is no, kind of moving on from there. I would also seek help. I'm certainly not a medical professional. I'm certainly not like qualified to be giving out medical advice. I would just say from someone who's been in recovery for a year and a half that seeking out external help is very, very, very helpful. Even if it's just like an online like recovery chat room or support group, because being around other people that struggle with the same thing is really helpful, and they'll also have like good tips. Should skinny people take body shaming just as serious as other people? When I wrote this one down, I wasn't really sure what this person meant. Should skinny people take body shaming just as serious? I don't know if this person is asking like if skinny people are the ones body shaming other people, or if we should take body shaming seriously when it comes to skinny people. I think overall, like anytime that you're shaming anyone for any body type is obviously kind of like shitty, right? Like on the Roast of Diet Culture show, on the episode that was published, you probably heard Tanya Sabrina, hilarious comic, do all these jokes about being skinny and like all the shit that she's been through being skinny. And so it's very clear that there's two ends of the spectrum. So I don't think body shaming in any scenario is okay. And like, I'm not saying that as someone who has never done it. I've had my faults. I've had plenty of mistakes that I've made in life. But I guess if you're talking about like, should we not body shame skinny people also because that's also a bad thing? Yes. Do skinny people benefit from thin privilege? Absolutely. Do they have to deal with the same amount of body shaming as maybe a fat person does? Probably not, but it doesn't mean that they should still have to like go through it, right? So I hope that's what you were asking. Should skinny people take body shaming just as serious as other people? Yeah. I think that makes sense. If you're a skinny person and you're being body shamed, that probably doesn't feel good, you know? So any type of body shaming, no matter who it is obviously shitty. We can recognize that there are levels to it. We can recognize that there are certain people in the population that benefit from privileges others don't. But overall, we can say body shaming is a no-no. Any tips for little tweaks to be a bit healthier? Honestly, the tweaks that I've made have all been things that have nothing to do with like food, exercise, weighing myself, things that you'd normally think as like healthy. My tweaks are things like not looking in the mirror until a certain time in the morning, or making sure that I carve out time to eat my breakfast before I do anything of like importance, like work or whatever. Being in tune with your hunger and fullness cues and learning more about your body. That's something I learned from that intuitive eating book that I've talked about all the time. It taught me a lot about how to stay in tune with my body, how to treat my body, how the metabolic processes of our bodies work and what it's telling us. So, you know, tweaks here and there, like people might say, oh, cut this dessert here or go for a walk here or whatever. Like, I don't really see that as like being healthier. I just see that as like controlling yourself more. For me, being healthier is little things like, okay, I have this really bad habit of like staying up late on my phone or staying up late watching Gilmore Girls or something. So how can I like convince myself to go to bed at 11 or whatever, and then like making that small tweak for myself. Recovery has been one giant fucking tweak. I'll tell you that. That's been an entire tweak. But I would ask yourself what you are looking for in your health goals and go from there. Because if your health goals are like, you know, losing weight or doing something like that, I can't help you. You do that. You got to do that on your own. But if you want to like become a healthier person in terms of like your happiness and your energy and your outlook on life, then I think it would come down to things like journaling, going to bed at a certain time, being in touch with your body, things like that. How can we maintain healthy body image / mindset in the land of swipe at first sight dating? How can we maintain healthy body image mindset in the land of first swipe dating? It's a personal choice, that's for sure. I mean, it is true. Like, we live in a world where you judge someone based on the first time you see them immediately, especially like millennials and younger. You know, we all grew up with like Facebook and Instagram, and then we got on Tinder and Hinge and Bumble, and it's like you see someone and you immediately judge them. And that's probably not going to go away as much as it sucks. Like, it's just how our dating landscape is now. But I think being true to yourself and understanding who you are is more important than caring what other people think about your first impression, right? Because if you're confident in yourself and someone judges you off of their first look and walks away, you know that you have so much more to offer than what they just saw. And so there's no way that that person can understand who you are just by looking at your face. The dating world is fucking tough now. It's really tough. Not only because you judge people right off that first impression, but because like you kind of have access to people whenever you want. So if you're like about to go on a date with someone, yeah, you could literally just like stalk them on Instagram or Facebook or whatever and get all the details that you need to know before you go out there, which I think is kind of a detriment, because then it's like, what's the point of even you should want to get to know that person in person. But I think it just still comes down to like knowing yourself. And I struggle with this a lot because my body gets judged a lot online. Like, you know, I'm a young, pretty woman and I do comedy. And so a lot of my content is out there. A lot of my comedy videos are out there. My podcast is out there. So I do get a lot of comments and I do get a lot of judgments from people from just seeing me one time. And it hurts, you know, like it sucks being told that I have a fupa, or that, you know, oh, why is it always the fat chicks that got something to say or whatever. But I've also learned that none of the people that have ever made comments about my body in that way are people that I would want to hang out with in real life, because they're those types of people, because they insult strangers on the internet, because they're not cool. So if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're being judged off of the first impression of the way you look by someone, then that's their loss. You know, it sucks. It's not like you can kind of become confident overnight, but I think the best thing that you can do for yourself is to develop your inner confidence before going out into the world, which I am still working on, and kind of go from there, because it is an online world now. We can't escape it. If you could tell little Morgan something to avoid all this, would you? To avoid all this, I'm assuming that means like eating disorder bullshit. I don't know. Because I feel like if I would have gone back in time to 13-year-old Morgan and said, hey, you don't need to do this diet, you don't need to go down this route, something else would have happened anyway, just because I did grow up in a very like white granola crunchy place, and I grew up with a mom who was extremely food conscious and weight conscious. So I feel like it would have happened anyway. If I didn't start it myself, it would have been someone else, or it would have been something else. So maybe I would go back in time and tell little Morgan, like, hey, you should work on your confidence, or you should realize how beautiful you are, or something like that. But I don't know if I would tell her to not engage in like the health world, because I just feel like it would be a moot point. That's tough. I don't know. I also wouldn't be who I am if I didn't go through all that shit. So sometimes I'm really thankful I went through all of it. How can folks stand up for themselves in healthcare settings that don't believe them are biased? How can folks stand up for themselves in healthcare settings that don't believe them are biased? This is a really, really good question. I know that there are a lot of people who live in larger bodies who have dealt with fat bias at the doctor, for example. A lot of women also go through this. A lot of women will go to the doctor and complain of certain things, and the solution that we get told a lot is to either lose weight or to like go on birth control. Like there's a lot of the time women's pain is taken differently for some reason. I recently discovered that there's actually a lot of databases that have just lists and lists of doctors from every possible practice who are part of the health at every size movement, body positive movement, are certified in intuitive eating. Like my nutritionist is like one of those providers who is certified as like health at every size and intuitive eating. So she as a nutritionist is listed amongst these larger sites. I know that I think it's the National Association for, oh no, it's not. It's a different one. I'll have to find it and put it in the show notes. But there is an association that I was researching that has an entire list of health at every size providers in all different states. So you can go and look for doctors who are certified in those practices and also believe in those ideas, so that when you go to them, they take what you say seriously. That's a really big issue in the healthcare industry, is when you live in a larger body, a lot of the time when you get sick or when something happens, the automatic solution is, oh, well, it's because you're fat. It's because you're obese. It's because you weigh this much. That's clearly the issue. When a lot of the time it's because of other reasons, but because people live in larger bodies, like that's just not what is seen as the solution. I know that in like my experience, like I've really only had a few experiences at the doctor where they've like said something about my weight, and I've had to kind of be like, I don't want to talk about that. Mostly just because I feel like they just bring up my weight for no reason, and they'll be like, hey, you weigh this much, but if you wanted to, you really could weigh like 15 pounds less. And I remember that was a doctor in Florida that told me that. And I just remember kind of being like, that was random. Like I'm here for a sinus infection. It was so weird. It was really weird. But yeah, I think looking for a provider who is conscious about those things, about like having an anti-fat or having a not being fat phobic, not having an anti-fat bias, understanding like the role of like body positivity and intuitive eating and health at every size. But if you can't find that, and if you're in an area where you really have limited options as far as doctors go, I think you can go in there and you can be like, hey, I have this problem. I don't want it to become about my weight, and see what happens. You know, the worst that's going to happen is a doctor might be like, well, I know better than you and you don't know what you're talking about. And clearly this is a weight issue. And then you don't go back to that doctor, right? But standing up for yourself, I think, comes a lot from like having the confidence to do it at all. Whereas if you kind of just like go in there and don't say anything and they just give you this, like you need to go on a diet or you need to do this or you need to do that. And then you go home and you just feel worse. Like, what did you really accomplish? So yeah, I think it's different for everyone, but finding a provider that cares for you in that way and then standing up for yourself, like in small increments. It doesn't have, you don't have to barge in there and automatically be like, you know, I'm here and I'm fat and I'm amazing, shut up. But you can go in there and be like, hey, I have this issue. And if they bring up weight, then take it from there, if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered that question well at all, but I'm going to hope I did. If you lose faith in how far you've come, what do you do to get back on track? I just keep going, man. There's no magic wand. I wish there was. I've lost faith many, many times in this process. Not because I don't think I can do it, but just because sometimes I'll have months where I feel like I'm really recovered and really good and I've eaten really well and I've been like careful not to slip back into my habits, and then, you know, something happens or I get really emotional and I engage in behaviors and then I'm like, oh wow, how the fuck did I get back here? So I kind of just I literally just keep going. That's it. Like there's no special ritual I do. It's literally just a day by day, sometimes an hour by hour thing. When I started recovery, it felt like every meal I had to really think about what I was doing and what I was eating and how I was eating it and what my body felt. And even though I'm not there anymore, there are days where if I think I'm not doing well, I kind of just have to remind myself, well, I just have to get through the next hour, the next meal, the next day, and it'll get better. So just keep going. That's it. I wish I had a better answer. It's just keep going. How can cis men like myself best learn from and engage with feminist spaces in a respectful way? I was very surprised when I saw that question come in on my Instagram. How can cis men like myself best learn from and engage with feminist spaces in a respectful way? I think it's really important to note that feminism is not a women's thing. Like feminism is not just for women. Feminism is literally just the belief in the equality of the sexes. Like it's not putting women above men. So like you can be a dude and be a feminist. Like in fact, I would encourage that. So if you're a cis man, like nothing is wrong with you. People might make you feel like, oh, because you're a cis straight man that you're inherently bad. I don't think that's true, but I think engaging with feminist spaces in a respectful way, I think is just being a part of them. Like just being in it and just recognizing that like you are a part of it. You may be one of few men there because a lot of feminism spaces are like mostly women, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. Feminism is for everyone because all it is the equality of the sexes. It's nothing about like putting women above men or giving us more rights. I actually wish that there were more men who kind of like stood up for stuff, especially in like the comedy world. I feel like I've kind of been through some shitty scenarios where I've been treated really questionably by like, you know, club owners or bookers or kind of powerful men in the industry in front of other male comedians. And they don't say anything because they don't want to get reprimanded by this big, powerful guy. And that kind of sucks, you know, because like I'm still a person. Like why do I have to get a kiss on the cheek when he gets a handshake and when he gets off stage? Like, why do I have to get a drink with you after the show when he gets to go home and just get paid? Like, so I think when you're in not only in a feminist space, but when you're just like in the world, if you see that kind of like misogyny happen or mistreatment of really anyone for that matter, I think that's the time to step in. It's not about like engaging in a feminist space because like you want to be there and you want to like creep in. It's about like doing it when it happens, if that makes sense. Because I guess what I think of when I think of feminist spaces is like, okay, so you want to go to like a women's march, or you want to go to like I don't know what else that would, like you want to go to like a gay bar or something. I don't know. You're allowed to go to those things, but like it means more if you're standing up for us in the moment, I guess. I don't know if all women would feel that way, but like I'm more impressed by a man that like stands up for a woman in real life versus a guy that like is just like, oh yeah, I like did this one thing, or like, look, I voted for Kamala, you know, like that. I'm like, okay, congrats. What helped you make the mental switch to move in a better direction? Well, I hit rock bottom and I came home and I realized that I had nowhere to go but up. That's it. There's a lot of ups and downs when you have an eating disorder, and a lot of the time most people who have eating disorders know what that rock bottom feels like because they've been there many times. And once you've been there so many times that there's an imprint of you at the bottom and you can see the outline of your body and you're like, oh shit, I've been here way too many times, you realize it's time to like swim up to the surface. It was bad. Have you dealt with body shaming, and or what do you do? Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I've dealt with body shaming since I was a kid. When I was younger, I didn't do anything. I didn't stand up for myself because it wasn't cool to stand up for yourself. It wasn't cool to talk back to people. It was cringe. Now it only happens on the internet. No one has ever come up to me in person as an adult and been like, you're fat, you're whatever. The only time I've really experienced it is if like maybe a few years ago, if I was like on a date with a guy and he would make a comment about like, oh, you're the first girl I've ever like dated that's like curvy or like has big thighs or whatever. And that always just made me feel like shit because I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, okay, so are you dating like little tiny women? Like why do you have to say that to me? Like how am I supposed to interpret that? But when I get comments online, usually there's like one of two things I do. It's either I delete and I block them immediately because I don't want to spend my mental health on that. Like I just don't want to deal with it. Or I go the complete opposite direction and I reply to them and I say something along the lines of like, wow, funny how a guy that looks like a toaster oven is commenting on my body or something, because sometimes it makes me feel better. Most of the time it doesn't, because I don't want to like fight fire with fire a lot. But lately it's mostly just deleting and blocking. In the past it has been like engaging and like me saying, like, what did you get out of leaving this comment? Like there was a guy like last week or so who said something about, I can't remember if it was my body or was a joke I did about my body. And he said said it was gross or disgusting or something. And I commented back and I was like genuinely curious, like, how do you feel after leaving this comment? Do you feel like vindicated? Do you feel better about yourself? And he never responded. And that's a very like specific interaction. I think body shaming can be shown in a lot of different ways. A lot of people unfortunately experience it mostly from their friends and their family. You know, you go to Thanksgiving and you see that one aunt that you hate and she always makes a comment about your body. And I think in those moments, it's okay to just be like, yeah, I actually don't pay attention to my body that way, but thank you. Or letting them know, like, I don't treat my body that way. I don't talk about my body that way. I don't speak negatively about my body that way, because it always throws people off. Even in times with my mom, when she has said things about my body, and she hasn't in a long time, but the times that she has, I usually just kind of remind her like, yeah, I don't look at myself like that anymore. And that usually shuts her up because then it makes her feel bad. So throwing it back in someone's face, not the insult, but throwing it back in someone's face and asking like, why did you say that? Or what did you mean by when you said that? When people have to explain why they were rude, they all of a sudden realize that they were rude. What do you do mentally to beat body image issues? I'm still working on it. Some days are good, some days are bad. Body image comes a lot farther along in recovery. I try really hard to just wear things that make me feel good. Do like have days where I know that I'm going to dress up. When I go to dance, sometimes I don't feel great about my body, but I don't think about the way I look. I think about the way I feel. But I'm still working on it. You know, it's to each their own. I would say the best piece of advice is to just find what makes your body feel good, whether it's movement, whether it's meditation, whether it's a certain lotion, whether it's wearing a certain kind of fabric, and try to indulge in it as much as possible. Because for me, dance is that. Dance makes me feel like I can do anything. And the more I dance, the better I feel. How can I give more support to my wife who is feeling uncomfortable in her body? How can I give more support to my wife who's feeling uncomfortable in her body? I guess it would depend on if you feel comfortable like having a conversation with her about why, or if you know why. If you know why, like let's say she just had a child, or maybe her body has changed in the last year, or for some reason now she's just kind of like really hyper fixating on her body. Having a conversation with her about why, where is this coming from? How can I help? I think a lot of the time I would rather be asked like, how can I help? Rather than someone just trying to like help without saying anything. Because then at least I know that the effort is coming. And sometimes all it takes is like having someone be there and saying, hey, I noticed that you're struggling with this. Like, how can I help? I love you. I'm still here for you. But yeah, it's all, I feel like in terms of like body image issues in a relationship, it's just about like communicating that. And it's about being like, I don't feel good about my body right now, or I don't want to do this right now. I feel weird, and just being honest. And that's such a cliche answer for any relationship question, is like, oh, communication, honesty. But that's honestly like kind of how it is. If your partner is struggling with something, even if it wasn't body image issues and it was something else, wouldn't you want to like have that conversation with them and it be like a real honest, deep conversation? So I would just say like, ask her how she's feeling, take note of what's happening. If she doesn't want to talk about it, also give her that space. If she does want to talk about it, listen. And don't make it about like, if she says that she feels bad in her body and she like, let's say she says something about like, oh, I just feel really flabby right now, I want to lose weight. Don't go to her and be like, yeah, okay, well then let's lose weight, because you're just going to compound the issue. Do you know what I mean? Like instead you can just gently say like, okay, well, why are you feeling that way? Like, is there something that's happening? Do your clothes fit differently? Should we get you new clothes? Like, can we move differently? Because I think as soon as there's like a, another person involved in someone's, body image issues, and the original person like wants to lose weight, and then the other person kind of becomes like the weight loss coach, it gets really dangerous and it gets really toxic. Because I've been there, man. I've gone to my mom with so many body image issues saying, oh, I want to lose weight. I hate my body. I want to lose weight. And then my mom encourages the shit out of me to, you know, not eat and to exercise and to do way too much movement and to completely like deplete myself. And then she gets mad at me when I retaliate and binge eat because my body's fucking starving. So just ask what they need. Just ask what they need. Okay, we only have a few more. How to deal with negative body image when we're constantly surrounded by it on social media. I am very picky about who I follow on social media, or I guess not who I follow, but who I have like unmuted. I follow a lot of people, but I mute. I'll be honest, I mute a lot of like really beautiful women that I follow because it makes me feel bad about myself. And maybe that's not the best way to deal with it, but like I follow a ton of like body positive influencers, larger influencers, just women that live in larger bodies. And when I see them on my timeline, that makes me feel like so seen, because I'm like, yes, I also have cellulite. I also have hip dips. I also have, you know what I mean? Like that body shape. Whereas the women that I follow that are typically more like the beauty standard, and they're really thin and they're, you know, have like the quote unquote perfect body. I can't look at that, because I start to spiral and I start to think about, oh, well, what if I looked like that? What would I have to do to look like that? So I would be very picky about what you engage with on social media. And I know it's hard, because we all want to watch stupid videos and we all want to see hot people, and we're only human, right? But curating my feed to be very specific to who I am has really, really helped me. And I try my best to only engage with content that is either funny, like, you know, like a dog or something, or like specifically for body positivity or like anti-diet culture, because that's how I want to interact with the world. It took me a long time to get to a place where I can like consciously mute someone and not feel bad and just be like, look, you're beautiful. Like, you're my friend, but like, I can't look at your shit. It makes me feel bad about myself. So it just also like timing yourself. Like, I have a 1 hour time limit on all of my social media apps. And so anytime I exceed 1 hour, it'll like the app will like close, and I can open it again if I really want to. But like, it's a good reminder to myself of like, okay, do I really need to spend longer than an hour staring at this phone? No, I really don't need to be doing this. So setting a timer and then being very specific and picky about who you engage with, I think is a great idea. What is your opinion of therapy versus resiliency? Could over-reliance be a societal issue? When I wrote this question down, I couldn't tell if this person was asking about, is over-resiliency a societal issue? Like, too many people think that they can just go without therapy, but they wrote over-reliance. And so now I'm like, okay, but is over-reliance referring to therapy? So I'll say this. I think therapy is an amazing tool. I think that anyone and everyone who can get into it should get into it. And it's not something to be ashamed of. Like, if you go to therapy, you're not fucked up. You're not a horrible human. You're not like broken. It's literally just another person who is unbiased that can kind of be a sounding board for you. I mean, my therapist has known me since I was 17 years old. So she knows all the dirty details about my family, my recovery, what I've gone through. But she's also like so neutral that she calls me out on my bullshit all the time. Like, when I tell her something and I feel like I'm 100% correct, sometimes she'll be like, well, that's a bit of an overreaction. Like, you need to kind of take a breath. In terms of the resiliency thing, yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are more in tune with like, okay, I'm just gonna push through life, and I don't need to go to therapy. I don't need to do that. Like, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna be resilient, which is fine. You're allowed to live your life the way you want to. I think it's just kind of tough. I think we all need a little support. Like, humans are we're like social creatures. So it's not embarrassing or bad to need a little support sometimes. But if this question was asking more about, is over-reliance on therapy a societal issue? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that I've never really heard of anyone being problematic because they've gone to too much therapy. Can you develop unhealthy coping mechanisms and codependency on a therapist or a mental health professional? Sure. I don't know how often that happens. I don't know what circumstances have to be right for that to happen. But I would say that the majority of people I've known that have gone to therapists have really enjoyed it, even if they've just done it for a short time, because it is kind of nice to just have someone to talk to that isn't like emotionally involved in your life, you know, especially someone that maybe comes from a different background or is older than you, or, you know, someone that can really just kind of pick apart what you're saying and kind of feed it back to you so that you really hear what's going on rather than being stuck in the emotions of it. I think therapy is great. How do you work on giving yourself praise/acceptance versus constantly wanting to look better? Oh God. I mean, to be honest, like I am relatively happy with the way I look because I know that this is who I am. Like I am a second generation American. I come from an Argentinian family. Like I'm a curvy Hispanic girl. I'm like, this is who I am. You know what I mean? Like, are there parts about me that I wish I could change? Absolutely. Are there parts about me that I have changed? Absolutely. But I think for the most part right now, I'm feeling pretty stable. And I try to give myself praise by like, you know, sometimes I put on a shit ton of makeup and I take photos of myself. I do that shit. You know what I mean? Like I've been learning how to do my own makeup recently, and I've been kind of like seeing what looks good with different outfits and different eyeshadows. And that's like made me feel really beautiful and excited because it's like artistry. You know what I mean? Like it's actually like hard as fuck. But the days that I guess I want to look better, or the days where maybe I don't feel good about myself, I just try really hard not to focus on it. I try not to spend time in front of the mirror. I try to wear clothes that are comfortable. I try to go outside. I go to dance, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't always feel good about myself at dance either, because that's, you know, you're in front of mirrors the whole time. You're surrounded by a bunch of other women and everyone looks different. So I think when I feel good, I really relish in it. And when I don't feel good, I do what I can. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think some days are better than others. I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to spend less time in the mirror, to spend less time looking at yourself and more time feeling, enjoying, experiencing, because that's what life is. Life isn't happening in front of a mirror. Life isn't happening with someone staring at every freckle and pimple and dimple on your face and body. Like it's not that deep. Okay, last question. What is the best way for men to be supportive to women? Oh man, that is a convoluted question. I can only really speak for myself, but again, like I said earlier, I think just being like having our backs in situations where having our own backs isn't enough. And I guess because I've experienced it so much in comedy and how women are treated differently in comedy, sometimes it feels really frustrating to know that like something could be happening right in front of me and right in front of a bunch of other male comedians, but they're not doing anything to stop it because they're too afraid to, or because they don't want the backlash. And that's a bummer. You know what I mean? Like, not that everyone has to step in. Like there are a lot of women who also are like, I don't want to be saved. I don't need to be saved. So it's tough, but I guess for me, like, if you're a man and you're like looking to support women, you're probably already doing it because you're like wanting to do it. I think like just standing up for women, even when no one's watching, right? Like standing up for women and voting in our interests and like backing us up, even when like no one is looking at you or expecting you to. Because at the end of the day, like, it's not like man versus woman. It's literally just, hey, can we also have the same rights? You know what I mean? Like sometimes it does feel like I get caught in the trap too of being like, oh, men suck, men are trash. And it's like, that's only because so many of the shitty ones have been brought to the limelight, unfortunately. But I think the best thing you can do is just like be a good human being, the same way that like you would want to support anyone else. You know what I mean? Like back them up, stand up for them if you see something being wrong. If you see one of your like guy friends saying something fucked up, call him out and be like, what the fuck? That was so rude, or that was so misogynistic. Like, why'd you need to do that? You know? Because I think the more men hold each other accountable, the easier it will be for you to act like that in public. And that's, yeah, it doesn't have to be a big like, gesture of goodwill towards women to prove that you're one of the good ones. Just constantly like looking out for us is, I think, all we could possibly ask for. So that was a intense set of questions there today. I'm not going to lie. I also got a lot of DMs that said, not a question, you're hot, but that was fun. So that's good. I think that's all we're going to cover for today. This was episode 30 of My Body, My Jokes. Thank you for listening. Remember to support the pod in any way you can. Send me your questions. Send me your thoughts, questions, concerns, dreams, hopes. And I'll see you next time. Bye.